My name's Andrew Gibbs. I work for the National Disability Services as a Disability Workforce Innovation Connector. I'm based in Bendigo. National Disability Services have 4 connectors based in regional Victoria. We are funded through Department of Health and Human Services as part of the Keeping Our Sector Strong, which is a Victorian state government initiative. I've been working on a project here in Bendigo with a disability service providers and a job active provider on how to recruit more people to the sector. Part of my role in working with disability service providers has been trying to find workforce solutions. It was obvious to me when working with disability service providers that there is a real disconnect between government funded employment agencies and disability service providers. So I thought there was obviously the potential for a talent pool to be accessed by the sector. So one of the goals of our project was to how can we better inform people who work within Job Active and DES organisations, and how to train their case managers to better have an understanding of the sector overall. So what we did, we got some project partners, and one of them was Department of Employment. Actually, Department of Employment have changed their names quite a few times in the last 6 months. So I think they're now called Department of Education, Skills and Employment. And what we did was they were running a national program at the time around doing similar activities to what we wanted to do in Victoria. So they were very easy to work with, and they were very happy to get on board with the NDS. So what we set out to do, we needed to find out what the industry actually needed. So we met with Amicus, who we have Todd Foster from Amicus on screen with us now. And we met with Amicus to really find out, what the issues were, because I'd identified those as them as an organisation who was growing significantly since the NDIS rolled out. We met with Amicus and Interchange, another provider here in Bendigo, and they told us, what the issues were on the ground and some of the efforts that they were making to recruit people to their sector. And they had similar issues. So what we did with that information, we ran a program, or we designed a program around meeting the actual individual needs of the sector. So the following day, we met with 30 case managers, and we provided them with information about how to go about working in the sector and the different roles that are available. It was fairly unique in the sense that we asked the CEO of Amicus, Anne-Marie Davis, to actually address the case managers, and Anne-Marie certainly gave them an overview of all the types of jobs that were available. Now, you might think that this is a program or a project that has been replicated in other parts of the country, and you are right. But what we really wanted, what made this a little bit more unique, was that we set out a challenge to the sector. I'm going to hand over to Todd from Amicus, who's going to explain specifically what that challenge was. So, Todd, if you would like to talk to us from Amicus and tell us what made this unique for you guys.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Andrew. Anne-Marie and I both attended that session with the case managers, and from our perspective, what we were looking for was a partnership with organisations that produced, I guess, job active or job ready people for us. One of the challenges that we've experienced, and I've been in this field working with disability for over 15 years, have partnered with providers previously in the job active area. And what we would typically get is we'd put on a kind of information session. They would send us potentially 30 people, but out of those 30 people, potentially, there'd only be 3 or 4 in the room with a genuine interest in working in the disability area. So our challenge to the job active and DES providers was to work with us to bring us job ready people who were actually interested in working in that disability field, and to be quite blunt, not waste our time and not waste theirs. So Anne-Marie, as you mentioned, spoke to the group, gave them an idea of what Amicus is about, our one-on-one approach with people, and then said, if you've got the people, or you can bring the people to us, and not just one at a time. We're talking about a group of people because our recruitment needs, because of the cost associated with recruiting, we don't just want to bring on one person. We like to bring on a group of people at a time and basically improve our workforce that way. So with that in mind, we left that challenge with the providers, and pretty much it was up to them. We were, within about a week, approached by a number of providers, both Job Active and DES, who were looking to, I guess, help us with that partnership. A number of different approaches in that, Andrew, which was interesting. Some of them wanted to actually make contact and talk to us and come and meet with us and actually get a better understanding of what Amicus is about. Others were happy just to drop off a number of pamphlets at reception and think that that was creating a partnership, which was disappointing. But so we worked with the ones that bothered to come in and see us and understand us. And from that, Kirsty at Matchworks, who you will introduce in a minute, was one of those. And from her presentation, we were keen to work with her. And another group was Access Employment, and they're a DES provider, and they also provided a good information to us about what they could do with us. So we looked at potentially getting both of those on board as a partnership to create potential workforce for us. Now, as part of that, Andrew, and a lot of the people listening will understand if they're involved in anything to do with recruitment, it's a long process, or it can be. So what we were particularly after was to have, as I mentioned before, job-ready people. So that would be that the organisations, the Job Active and DES, work with the people that they've got who are genuinely interested in our field to come already with a completed resume, a national police check, a working with children check, a current first aid. Basically, they're doing all the screening for us before we go anywhere near a night where we provide information to those people. From there, we would hope that, and what did happen is we worked with them. We actually used Kirsty's big training area, big training room to run our sessions, which was great. So between those two organisations, we ended up with about 40 people in a room recently to go through our presentation to look at new recruits. And out of that, where I mentioned before, typically you might have 6 who were generally interested. We did that presentation to 43 people on that night, and there were 3 that self-selected out, and we had 40 genuine applicants to look at out of that process. Now, if people have been through a recruiting process, you know that that's gold for an organisation like us to actually have a pool of talent that we can choose from. Now, out of that process, we actually ended up selecting about 16 of those people who we thought would match really well with what Amicus offers. So, that's a great outcome for us. But the other thing is, I guess, Andrew, those people who we didn't find a match with, they've got other organisations and disability places that they can then go and seek out, and they can continue the process with them. So it's not just for Amicus, it's for all organisations that this benefits.
Absolutely.
That's good. That's good. Thank you, Todd. Kirsty, obviously working for Matchworks as a business development officer, how did you approach it, and what did you see some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, I have to say the big difference I found was with the information session that the department put on was Matchworks as a team. We decided to send a member of the employment solutions team. So it wasn't just a case manager. We sent two staff from our site. One was a case manager who works with the job seekers, and then there was myself, who I work with the employers. And I think that was a really valuable tool to do, because you're getting both sides of the job active world, of both job seekers and the employers. So I listened to Anne-Marie's presentation and took a lot out of it. And one of the main things I did take out of it was she had a form, which I actually have here. But it showed all the characteristics and the personalities that they look for, amicus, of in the right candidate. And I thought that was a fantastic approach, that especially in this current climate we're in, where there's a lot of free courses, sometimes you can have people doing a Cert 3 in aged care or something, but it's that the personal characteristics that a lot of the disability provider services are looking for, the compassion, the caring, the, you know, putting the needs of clients first, things like that. So that's the approach that I actually took when I arrived back at Matchworks. I was very excited that we'd been given the opportunity to present our solution. So, but I was also very conscious that you're right, I'm not wasting the employer's time is very valuable, and so you want to make sure you get the right candidates there. And so that I sort of threw the challenge out, came back, educated the employment consultants or the case managers of this wonderful opportunity, and knowing that in Bendigo, health was going to be the boom industry, or is the boom industry. And that a lot of people who have transferable skills can go into the health industry under, the NDIS now. So put the challenge out to the employment consultants to provide names of people they believe may have those personal traits and characteristics in their dealings with them. So went through, empathy, compassion, all those sort of things, and got a lot of names from the employment consultants, probably ended up with about 60, 70 names. So then from there, sat down on the phones all day and just called people, and only just invited them into Matchworks for an information session. So by making it about a 5-step process, I think was the key, that by the time you get to the 5th stage, you've got the right candidates. Because doing that 5-stage process that I did, we would have people drop off, and I'd assure them that that's okay, that, yeah, you've reached this point and thought, no, it's not for me. And, we encouraged them that at any stage throughout this process, if they felt it wasn't for them, to, feel comfortable to actually, withdraw their application. So we did a big information session here with about, in the end, I think I got 35 people from Matchworks in the room. And then from that, 23 attended. So, sorry, when I say I got 35, they all confirmed over the phone, yep, that would interest me, the information session. 23 attended here, and out of that 23, only 2, after I spoke to them about these personality traits, was very transparent with them about what I had heard about NDIS and providers, of, the type of work, the hours, and that there can be sometimes weekend work. And so it was very transparent with them. And then only 2 from that information session said, no, this isn't for me. So it was really wonderful that the ones who stayed on, we then, as Todd said, went down that process of police check, first aid, working with children's, which, some job actives might be a little bit apprehensive to make those sort of investments when there's, at this stage, no position. But we saw it as sort of crucial to be able to have them perfectly in place to then go and approach amicus, knowing that if for some reason they weren't suitable to amicus, we knew there were other providers, as Todd said earlier, that we might be able to approach, knowing that we've got some really, really good candidates here in front of us. So that was sort of, in the end, a very long process, but we knew, I was sort of confident by the time I then approached Todd with my solution, or Matchworks solution, that I had some really, really good candidates to actually say, this is, our solution. And as Todd sort of reflected on earlier, it was so very important to make sure that you didn't, that you included, other job active providers and DES providers, so that you can provide a vast array of people that would be suitable for the employer. So any job active that, opens up the doors to other job active providers and DES providers, it's just such a win-win solution, because you're offering a relationship to an employer that's very, very much with the employer's, workforce in mind. Because as you say, you don't want to waste their time. It only benefits everybody if you can include all providers in that pool.
Kirsty, was it obvious when you were meeting with the job seekers that they had never considered a career in the sector? Was that a bit of an eye-opener for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was standing in front of the information session and then talking about how, you a qualified builder who wants to down the tools but doesn't want to leave the workforce, and then saying to him, well, that knowledge and that skill you have, what if you were able to, transfer that to a young man or young lady who has a passion for, that sort of industry but needs that added support. And that was fantastic to see the look on their face of, my goodness, I'd never thought of that sort of work, and to see them go, quite out of the room with a little bit of a spring in their step, because it's a career path that, a lot of them hadn't considered. And we found that in the information session, that I would go back to the employment consultants and say, wow, these people that you've recommended, they've found a new career. And that's probably the biggest thing I wanted to stress to the people that were applying, that this isn't a job, this is a career. And I think when you put it in that sort of framework, it brings about a lot more of a serious conversation, that we don't want people in this industry who just are doing it for a job. You want them in it because it's either a passion or a career that they're very, very interested in. So when I framed it like that, that was, you get a much more authentic group of people to then approach an employer and say, I've got this group of people who are very interested.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. So Todd, do you think so what was the key to the relationship between yourself and Matchworks?
Look, I think the honesty approach, for us being candid with Matchworks and with Access, that this is what we want, don't waste our time. And like I said, I don't apologise for that approach, because we actually don't want to waste our time with people who aren't interested. We want genuine people, because we've got, as Kirsty said, genuine career paths for people with the right attitude and the right fit. So just being open and honest about what we were after, being upfront about what would help us put those people into place quickly, and working with Matchworks and Access to help them understand our needs and create that genuine partnership where the benefit is for both, and it's obvious that that's a win-win.
Mm. And I have to say, it was a real privilege to work with Todd, to see their recruitment process and to be a part of it, because you don't sometimes get to see that side when you're working with an employer. You usually just present resumes, and then you might get a call a week later to say, we've put on X, Y, and Z, or these three people. But to actually be involved in the information sessions that we had here and to provide the facility was wonderful. And to see that information process, and to see our not only our job seekers but other job active providers and DES providers, candidates, perform in their information sessions and screening process was a real privilege to be a part of, and a great way to learn how an organisation works.
So I think it's obvious from listening to you both, it was a real business partnership, and it relied on that honesty and good and strong feedback to come up with the best solution. You both went into it knowing that what your outcomes needed to be.
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And sometimes it's not always about quantity for, you know, it's got to be quality. If you want to sustain that relationship with an employer, it's that quality that you want to provide. And yeah, by bringing in other providers and everything, that helps you. Because, I mean, as much as I would love to put 40 Matchworks clients with Todd at Amicus, you know, I wanted to give him quality, and you know, it would be a benefit if there was 40, but yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to the quality of candidate. Yeah.
So look, thank you very much for that. So as I said at the beginning, the project, you know, was looking at educating case managers, but the major focus of our project was to create a business relationship that can demonstrate that job active and DES providers can create, you know, meaningful relationships with the disability sector. And what we've heard today is, you know, 2 organisations have gone into a relationship that is just going to benefit both organisations, and it's based around communication, and it's based around a bit of honesty and integrity and having the right values, which is what we all talk about in the sector. So thank you very much for telling us or sharing all that information, and we hope that the project and the relationship continues in the future, because I think the big challenge now for the sector is that with COVID-19 and the impact it's had on the workforce, that there are more job seekers out there who will be looking for meaningful careers, and we need to be available and open to having more people you know, entering our sector who have got the right values. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Pleasure.
Thank you.